Welcome back to the Junk Room, everybody. It's me, the Junkman, coming back at you with a new video. And here's the topic I don't think I've talked about. James Bond. Remember James Bond? Sure you do. He's still popular today as ever. In fact, he has a movie coming out. Well, we don't know when or if it's going to ever come out. But I went to see Empire Strikes Back this weekend and saw a preview for the new James Bond movie. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the new James Bond. We're going to go back to 1983 and talk about the first James Bond movie I ever saw in the theaters, Octopussy. Now, I've seen some James Bond movies before that, but this is the first one that I went to see at the theater. So to me, it's my first experience with James Bond. Like I said, I saw Moonraker on television, and I really loved it because of the Jaws character, and I wish they would bring him back. But this video is not about the movie Octopus. This video is not about that movie Octopus. This video is not about the movie Octopussy. It was funny back then, and it's still funny today. But I remember in 1983, my parents, well, not my parents, my friend's parents, Boyd would get upset whenever we talked about Octopussy. Whenever we said we wanted to see Octopussy, they would get so upset. Didn't know why until probably 20 years later when I found out what part of that word meant. Octopussy. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the movie. We're talking about something I saw in Starlog magazine in 1970. And it's something we saw in Starlog magazine, issue 74. That came out around September 1983, when the movie Octopussy was already out and probably already seen. Now, there were two James Bond movies that year, and I remember I went to see the new Octa, movie. And my brother, who was a James Bond fan more than I was, he wanted to see Never Say Never, starring who he said was the real James Bond, Sean Connery. I was like, you fool, there's no better James Bond than Roger Moore. Hey, I was a kid, and this was 1983, and I was just getting introduced to James Bond. So Roger Moore was the James Bond I grew up on. But now that I'm older, I know that Sean Connery is better. But I've always been really kind of partial to Timothy Dalton. And I don't feel like Timothy Dalton gets enough love out there. But again, we're not here to actually talk about the movie. In that Starlog issue number 74, I saw an ad for something I just had to play. A James Bond video game for Atari. I think it's for a television maybe also, but I saw Atari and I had Atari. And I never had a James Bond game. And I thought, this is going to be a good game. What better movie to take and make into a game than a James Bond movie? And it wasn't just a James Bond game. It was a James Bond movie based on Octopussy. Sorry. Octopussy. Some people call it Virginia.
Even though most people call it vagina, and some children call it Virginia.
So I got this ad, and I remember seeing James Bond Octopussy game coming out. Octopussy. But I remember when there was a James Bond game, it was just a James Bond game that went over a few of the earlier movies. It didn't have nothing to do with the current movie I just saw. So I wanted to dig into it and find out what happened. Was I crazy? I know there was going to be an octopus. Get it together. I knew there was going to be an Octopussy game, but I didn't know what happened to it. So I had to dig around a little bit to find out. Maybe it did get out, maybe I just missed it. As you can see here from the Starlog ad, and it was probably appeared in other things, there was a planned Octopussy game. In fact, it was announced in 1982 by Parker Brothers. It would have been available for the Atari 2600 and the Intellivision 2, and would have been his first tie-in video game movie. Now, I knew the company Parker Brothers from a lot of board games they had at the time, but I didn't know they made video games. So I was excited. Here's one of my favorite companies that make board games making a video game on a movie that I'm just starting to get into, James Bond. And based on a movie I really liked when I went to see it called Octopussy. So I was excited. Parker Brothers, video game. It had everything I wanted. Parker Brothers were already making video games based on movies. They made the Empire Strikes Back Star Wars game, the lightsaber battle game Star Wars Jedi Arena. So here it was, a James Bond game based on Octa. According to a Parker Brothers brochure, in this game you will take a train ride for your life as Agent 007 in this fast-paced moving action-adventure game. It also said the game had some deadly knife throwers, and some trigger-happy gunmen were on the heels of 007. And you got to battle on top of a speeding train. As Parker Brothers said, think fast, but you have to even act faster as you try to avoid their attacks without being knocked off the train. So that was the theme of the game. Hey, this was Atari. This was the early 80s here. We're not talking about games that looked like the movie. You usually just took one scene from a movie and it loosely looked like something on that. But this was going to be the train scene. And to be honest with you now, I don't even remember a train scene, but I haven't seen Octopus.
All girls have a vulva, so no matter what you've heard, remember that vulva is the proper word.
Pussy. I haven't seen Octopussy in a long time, so I don't remember the train scene. But I can remember being hyped for this video game takes place during a train. It sounded really exciting. So you had one of the most exciting scenes in the film. Probably, again, I don't remember it, but I bet it was if it was a fight scene on a train. So you had one of the most exciting fight scenes on a train turn into a video game. But this was 1983, and honestly, I was getting out of video games. In fact, we all were getting out of video games. Thanks, E.T.
It isn't fair. It's just not fair.
The video crash was about to take place, and I think I was really out of Atari by 81, 82. Most of it had moved on at this time, with the exception of maybe a few games here and there. I remember I bought the Star Wars Jedi Arena game around 1983 just because it said Star Wars on it. And it was the first Atari game I played in years. And don't let me lie to you, I didn't buy it. Someone bought it for me. But let's get back to that Starlog ad in issue 74. It had quotes from people that played the game. Gamers or reviewers. How did these people get to play the game? It never got released. There seems to be some tomfoolery going on with the reviews in this ad. Check out this one. Karate kicks, jump, lasers, and more. A truly unique home video game. Captures Bond at his best. Sounds good, but look who wrote it. Morally unsafer. Or check out this one. Knife throwers, gunmen, and the James Bond theme to boot. It spawns every step up the way, right down to the musical theme song. The thrills are non-stop. By the Rolling Pebble. And then there was, the longer the game went on, the more furious the chase became. When Bomb leaps from train to train, my heart skips a beat. By the Boston Orba. You'll try to capture the gem while bonding across the spinning octopussy octopi circus train. The James Bond home video game is a priceless gem. Vincent can't be. And then there was one that seemed to take off from the place where Clark Kent worked. Check this one out. The action was so involving, it made me feel like the master spy himself, the Daily Platter. Now, as a kid, I didn't get this joke. I just saw, look how exciting these people love the game. So I guess it was a little misleading to kids like me, but that's probably the brilliance of the ad. It's misleading, but for others to get it, it's funny. So either way, it makes you kind of want the game. But what happened to this game? How did it go from being a generic James Bond game based on some earlier films and not the promised octopus not the promised Octopussy game that I was led to believe I would get. The game that was released was James Bond 007, and it combined a lot of different movies into one game. Diamonds Are Forever, Moonraker, For Your Eyes Only, The Spy Who Loved Me. But there was nothing in this game that had anything to do with Octopussy.
Nobody is supposed to touch your private parts.
And the exciting train scene, it was nowhere to be found in the game. Well, it seems to be two different companies that made this game. One that made the Octa game, and the other one that made the Released 007 game. First, Parker Brothers went to Western Technologies. Is that the name? Western Technologies? Yeah, get that right. To create the game based on the film. But according to the lead programmer from the game that was released, Western Technologies never finished their game. They got behind schedule and could never complete it in time. So it looks like Parker Brothers just said, well, the hell with you, and decided to make a whole nother game. And they reached out to a company called One Time Software, who was able to get a game of James Bond to the market. But being that this was going to be really late after the release of the film, I guess they decided not to base it on one film and just make a generic James Bond game, looking back at some of the other films. So it was the game James Bond 007, so it became the very first ever James Bond video game. And it was based on the franchise, not Octopus. You know what I'm saying. And it seemed like this wasn't the only game that was planned. Parker Brothers had plans to do a Moonraker game. In fact, a game designer made the game. But it tested poorly with the higher-ups at Parker Brothers. You know, those guys with the business suits that went to college and everything, that was going to tell us about video games and James Bond. They always ruin everything. So sadly, we never got a game based on Moonraker. According to the game programmer, you're in space orbiting Earth in the space shuttle, chasing by bioterrorist pods to shoot them down before they break up into the atmosphere. It seems that Parker Brothers wanted their James Bond game to be more something like Pitfall. They're a toy company, just want to copy what someone else is doing. And they weren't happy with this Moonraker game. They wanted more of a Pitfall type game. A little guy running to the left or the right and some little spy gadgets. I can kind of see how that might work for a James Bond game. But sadly, we never got the Moonraker game, and we never got the promise, the advertised Atari game from James Bond Octopussy. We never got the game Octopussy. It's going to be a hard video to get through.
You're right. Boy, am I proud of you.
But this really never did matter because it was 1983. The video game boom happened. And 2 years later, Kenner would end up buying Parker Brothers. There were some other games in the pipeline that we didn't get, like a game based on the Lord of the Rings and an Incredible Hulk game. That would have been a cool one. Incredible Hulk. Incredible Hulk for Atari. That would have been a good one to have. Now, what happened to these two James Bond games that never got released? A lot of times these games get leaked into a ROM form or something online, especially this far after it's been released. But these games never did surface. The Octopussy game seemed like it was really on its way to being made, worked on. There should have been at least some levels or something to leak out or get put up online, but nothing. Same thing with the planned Moonraker game. They did get finished and tested, but the higher ups, with their nose all up in the air, didn't like it. What happened to that one? Surely that one could get leaked out. Well, according to the programmer, he doesn't know what happened to it. He gave it to Parker Brothers, and he said they probably wrote over that disc, writing over the code to do some kind of inventory for cereal or something. Fun. So sad, looks like we'll never get the first original plan for a James Bond video game. Octopussy. Said it while laughing. Yes! Honk. Well, let's look at a James Bond game we didn't get, a James Bond game we did get, and a James Bond game that was finished, but we still didn't get it either. 3 James Bond games. Oh well, let me know in the comments below what you think. Would you have liked a James Bond game for Atari or in television? Said in television 2. I don't even remember in television 2. Or maybe I just called in television 2 in television. Was never really a big fan of the television. Didn't like that controller, like a weird cell phone or something. Anyway, that's a look at a video game unreleased. I hope you enjoyed this video. Kind of a little something different here. I haven't looked at much unreleased video games except for Star Wars, of course. Anyway, as always, please thumb up this video so I know you like my content. Subscribe to the channel. And when you see your grandma, tell her Octopussy.
You stay safe. All right.
Junkman.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.